Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexa Campen, and I have just one question to kick things off. Who is ready to lock in? Now, over the next 30 minutes, Jerry Skipwith, the president of Valet Wireless, will show you exactly how to lock in major savings for your 2026 wireless budget. Now, before we begin, just a couple of quick notes. We do ask that everyone please stay muted throughout the presentation, but feel free to drop any questions into the chat. Dana, our moderator, will be monitoring this chat and making sure that all questions are captured. Anything we do not get to will be followed up personally after the session. Now, are you ready to lock in your 2026 wireless savings? Let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Jerry Skipwith.
Thank you, Alexa. What a wonderful intro. You're very, very good at this. Thanks to everyone that is joining us. We really appreciate your time and know that everyone's very busy. So with that, we'd like to add a little value to your day. We are here to talk about how to reduce cellular expense. Everyone knows it's a big line item. Everyone knows it's a bit of a nuisance to handle, and it can be significant. It can also represent some significant savings for those organizations that are looking to optimize and reduce their expenses wherever they can. So what makes us qualified to speak about this? Valet, we believe we're the pioneer of managed cellular services. Our whole purpose in life is to make cellular hands-off and worry-free for medium and large enterprise across Canada. We do everything. We do the expense management. We do asset management. We actually handle the assets. We deploy them. We support end users, as well as repairing devices, then bringing back, refresh, and reusing inside the organization. Through those years, at the time that we've done this, we have lots of customers, and we've interacted with many businesses and helped them understand where their opportunities are. Through that, we've learned a lot. So we're going to share our learnings with everyone here. So there's three things we're going to go through. The first one is we're going to cover off the 4 signs of wireless savings. We know that bills, the carrier bills can be large. Generally, it's for every line you have, you're going to have 3 to 5 pages of invoice. So if you have a 200 phone organization, you're looking at between 700 to 1,000 lines or pages in your invoice to go through. So that's daunting. So what we're going to cover off are 4 signs, some easy things that you can look at, that you can just do a quick look, and that will give you an indication of, is there some opportunity for you? Is it worth diving deeper? Second thing we'll cover off, and having gone through this with many, many organizations, is we'll cover off the 5 typical sources for wireless savings. And it does seem a lot of companies fall into the same patterns. We see the same areas, and often it's the same solutions that allow those to be corrected and bear savings for the organization. And then 3 actions you can take with that. If you've looked at the 4 signs, if you've understood the 5 typical sources, here's 3 things you can do to really take advantage and see some savings in your cellular spend. So the very first sign of wireless savings, and this is very easy to look at. We just call it, what's the monthly invoice variability? How do you change from month to month? So here's an organization, and what you will see is real data from analysis and assessments that we've done. So it's real customer data. Obviously, there's nothing to identify who they are. This is an organization we worked with recently to identify where their opportunity was, and we looked at the variability. They weren't too bad. It was actually about 12%. How you come to that, to figure out what's good and what's bad, is just take over the past 6 months, the lowest cost month, and divide that into your highest cost. You'll subtract 1 to give you a percentage. And if you are less than 6%, you're best in class. That's very little variability. If you've got more than 12%, it means there's some opportunity for savings that's absolutely worth your effort. And if it's more than 20%, being harsh with our words, we figure those are unmanaged environments, not being watched that carefully. And the upside of that is it represents large opportunity for savings. Why the variability means something. The key reason is that you've got your monthly fee, your monthly service fee on a plan, you've got the number of lines, And that's your fixed cost. If it's going up and down a lot, it means there's lots of other charges being levied, whether it's overage, whether it's usage, whether it's devices, cancellation, to be determined, but it means there's lots going on. There's lots of other charges. So for us, that's just a flag popping up saying, this is the first sign. There's some opportunity here. The second sign, now this one requires not a lot of work, but a little bit of looking, is just looking for additional fees on the invoice. So you can just go into any one month, the last month or 2 months ago, have a look at the invoice. And what you will find if you look at multiple months is they all tend to be the same. You got the same things going to pop up. And this is a snapshot right off of one of the carrier's invoices, and any identifying information of the customer has been removed. But if you go in and actually TELUS is the best, and so this one is TELUS. TELUS is really easy. At the very top of their invoice, they've got a summary of expenses, and so you can go in and just look for other things there. What's there? Are there a lot of them? What are the fees? And it just gives you a good sense for what are all the extras that are being added on to your invoice. This one's from Rogers. They have, when their bill comes out, they don't have the same summary that TELUS does, but they do have a line by line summary, and it's organized. It allows you to quickly scroll through the first however many pages, and you're just looking for, what are other additional charges and credits, what are usage charges, what are additional charges after taxes, and you can go in and just with a quick look, you can see if there's stuff there to say, yep, there's something going on, let's dive a little deeper. Bell is a little bit tougher. They don't have a good summary at the beginning, and then they dive into the details on every phone. But what you can do is go back to the self-serve portal or go back to your Bell rep and ask them for some detailed reporting, particularly around additional charges. And you can get that and have that look. And again, at this point, you're just scanning through quickly to know, is there some opportunity for us that we want to look at this further? So things that you want to watch for when you're doing that is any usage charge that's above your plan is an extra. Have a look at that, and particularly if the number's getting bigger, you want to dive in on those. That's a good sign. Other is add-on services. Have a good look at those, see what they are. If there's a lot there, you'll want to dive a little bit deeper. That's another, again, the red flag that says, yes, there's opportunity for us. Anything not familiar, a lot of times in the invoices, it gets very telco speak that you have no idea what it is. Even us, we're in this, all the carriers are a little different. They've got these short forms. We don't know what they are. We have to ask. But if it's not familiar or you've got old terminology, a lot of times you'll see MMS charges, you'll see LTE charges or high-speed charges. There'll be this old terminology, which again is a really good flag to say there's probably something here to be investigated. And the other one is just a big dollar value. If there's an extra charge for 5,000 or 10,000 based on the number of lines, that's good having a good look. It's amazing how often these charges are identified and then reversed, sometimes even going backwards over time because they've been charged incorrectly, and you got $1 to $2 to death on all the lines that you have. So that's a second sign of wireless savings. The third sign, and again, it's a really easy, crude measure, is what's the average cost per line. And it just kind of cuts through all the noise of you've got a monthly service fee, you've got charges for usage, you've got cancellation fees, deactivation fees, perhaps you even have some activation fees. You've got all these different charges that go on, and it's just a way to cut through. And it's really simple. It's just take your total spend, divide by the total number of lines. And this is a great example of a client that we did some work with, help them do this. And to say that you've got lots of opportunity. They thought they had a great plan. They thought their monthly service fee was great, and there was nothing we could do to help them. And just right off the very first thing we did, simple math, average cost per line, they weren't paying $45 a line. They were paying over $70 a line. They were shocked at how all the additional charges added up and had no idea that they weren't getting as good a deal as what they thought. So average cost per line is a great indicator, very easy way to just go in, total spend, divide by total number of lines. When's a good time to look? If you're less than 40, and we see lots of organizations in that range, if you're less than 40, you're best in class. It means, you might be able to tweak or save a little, but you're in a great spot. You don't need to worry too much. If you are getting up into that $55 range or over that, there's absolutely opportunity for savings that's worth your effort. It could be substantial. And if you're into that $70 range, like the organization that we just showcased above, again, we call it an unmanaged environment. There is always significant savings that can be achieved if you're paying that kind of average cost per line. So that's the third sign. Now, all those, I'm getting this to advance. There we go. This sign is a little bit difficult. This is the fourth and final sign of something to do a quick check to say, is it worth investigating further? But look for unused lines. This is harder to get. And this is, again, an organization that we worked with recently. They, more than 20% of their lines were unused. And this is not an exception. This is actually very typical, particularly with large organizations and organizations that have a low MSF, where they think they have a great plan. They kind of take their eye off. They don't pay as much attention. And before they know it, it's kind of like rabbits. They've got all these unused lines across their organization, putting a dramatic burden on their expense. So this is one to look at, and it's a little tougher to get this information. This is one, the self-serve portals. You can go in. They do have some unused line reporting, but they generally don't make it really easy to look at or easy to use. And that's the carriers. They want to provide service, but they also want to protect their own interests. And losing lines is never something that's on their Christmas list. So it's a little more work to look for your unused lines. But just once you've got that data, go and have a look. If you can get it for a couple months, great. And then just do, again, simple math. How many lines do we have, and divide into that the number of unused lines. If you're less than 4%, that's best in class. You're doing really well. You're actually managing your environment very tightly. If you're more than 8%, and we see very few organizations that are less than 8%, there is a significant opportunity for savings that it's absolutely worth your while. And then again, we call them more the unmanaged environment. You're over 20%, and it's surprising how often we see this. We've even seen organizations getting up into the mid-30s in terms of the number of unused lines, which again represents, it's a problem right now, but it represents a huge opportunity without changing anything. You don't need to change your contract. You don't need to change, you're not affecting users that are using their phones. It's just cleaning and going after really easy pickings. So those are the four signs that you can do. They're just something you can look at, run these through, and it allows you to make that decision. Do I want to go a little bit deeper here because it's worth my effort? So I'd like to hear from one of our customers via video. Larry can introduce himself, but we'll just play this right now. And if you could just nod, Alexa, to make sure that the sound is going through.
Absolutely.
Sure. So my name is Larry
We are good.
Baldachin, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. Yes, I mean, we're saving now, given where we were last year, probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of our overall wireless spend. So the savings actually for us are over, if I look at it on an annualized basis, are north of about $150,000 plus a year for us, which is significant money, particularly for a charity.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. We'll hear from him again. There we go. So we just went through the four signs, the things you can look for. They're easy tests to say, is this worth your while to invest some time and dig a little bit deeper? So the first source of savings, this is what we see, is in terms of the five things that typically is what we see. The first source is, and we call it the big easy because it really is easy pickings, is the unused lines, like we just spoke about. Is every month do an audit. And then suspend, reuse, or cancel inactive lines. And just to kind of highlight the impact of that. Nope, gonna get this to advance. There we go, there we go. This is the unused line impact of another organization that we did some work for. And you can see what it does. So there again, north of 20% that they've got an unused line rate. When you actually figure out what the cost of that is just under 20% was what the spend was. So here was a large organization, not unlike the story Larry just told or covered off in savings, that there's a large savings there, and it's easy pickings that doesn't require a lot of work, and it doesn't impact your contract. It doesn't impact the carrier. It at least of the terms you have with them, and it doesn't impact your existing end users. So to kind of highlight again just how much impact unused lines can have, we talked another organization that we did some work with, and their cost per line was north of 55. We said there's absolutely some opportunity to work. It's actually opportunity to save. It's growing, and then they also had a high unused line rate. And when you factor that in, they were north of $80 a line. So what we do is you've got an average cost per user using a shrewd metric. It's a really easy way just to figure what's it costing per person. And then when you figure, well, we're paying for these lines, but there's no user. So take that total cost and then divide it by the number of active users, and your average cost per line is much more. So this organization, again, they thought they were getting a pretty good deal. They thought it was okay because they're MSF, but they were actually paying per user, in around just under $70. And when they factored in the unused lines, it was approaching $90 a line is what their cost was per month. So unused lines have a huge impact. It's easy to do, and we call it the big easy. The other neat thing with this is don't forget the assets. It's not just the line and you're saving the carrier expense, but at the end of each of these lines, there's a cell phone. And those are corporate assets that can be either salvaged and sold, or salvaged and donated to a worthy cause, or salvaged and reused. And this was a count of the devices that were on the ends of those lines that we were able to salvage back for the customer. And so, an iPhone 15, an iPhone 13 was still on the bubble when we did this. iPhone 14, they brought in another 21 devices that you just figure the replacement value of that. If they brought in a new staff, and rather than giving them a new phone, they could use one of these refreshed ones, the savings to them on that was $30,000, because that's what the replacement value of these phones are. And that doesn't include what value were they able to salvage out of the other devices. So not only do you save money for the line cost, but you also see significant savings on the asset cost. So again, number one source of savings, big easy, is unused lines. And here's a few words from our good friend Larry again about the impact of unused lines.
We've actually historically not done a great job managing our mobile fleet. We have over 1,400 employees across the core CNIB organization and our affiliate programs. And many of those people work in the field and are either part-time or seasonal in nature. So they come and go. We give everybody who needs a phone because that's how they actually stay in touch with us. And that's how they actually provide feedback to us with regards to the services that they're providing, whether they're in home or rehab or advocacy programs. But when they leave, we don't always actually know that the phones have come back, or if they do come back, we don't do a great job of erasing those phones and redeploying them in the field. So we continue to pay for the lines, and the phones either sit in a box or in somebody's desk somewhere across the country and don't get properly cleaned and wiped and swiped and then redeployed.
Okay.
We've actually
Thanks again, Larry. It was a great insight. And that's actually a story. It's I'd say 9 out of 10 customers experience. So the second large source is we call just dive into the pool. You want to avoid data overages, and you actually don't want to overpay for your data as well. So we recommend designing to 85% your pool. So if you look at all the lines and whatever the plan they are, whether it's a 10 gig or 25 gig plan that all goes pooled, is what we recommend is designing your pool to a sum of all the plans to give you so that your max usage is 85% of your total pool. And if you do that, it keeps you out of trouble. And also do some live monitoring. All the carriers have good tools that allow you to set alerts that when your pool is getting close to being used up, or or you can actually set the thresholds so that you're informed and you can do some work to mitigate anyone that might be doing something, not so much that they shouldn't, but they're just not aware of how much data that they're consuming, typically is what we see. So here's an example of a customer who did some work with, and we actually went back 12 months, and this is a case of they're overpaying. They're just using, well under 50% of their pool. And what we like to use as a rough, just a rule of thumb is if you have an extra 1,000 gigs, you're paying an extra $1,000. So if there's 1,000 gigs you don't use, you can get smaller plans. And you actually kind of do all the math on what are we paying per gig. It's a nice rule of thumb. There's going to be times it's higher, times it's lower, but that just gives you a sense for how much can we really save. But anyway, it's just dive into the pool. Here's a nice example of a customer that's doing a really good job. They've got their pool managed. They're coming into their busy season, and you can see they're hitting that 85% threshold. They can run that through the busy season with a little more travel and activity during the summer, and then it'll trail down. And they're monitoring as well. So this was the ideal state. We like to hold them up as that's a best-in-class example of an organization doing really well. We actually have, and we use across different dimensions of cellular management, but around data management, we have some best practices defined, and to follow these in the 85% design for 85%, monitor the usage. And one more thing as you do this is understand the cost of data, and that is know what your next incremental gig is. You can look in, I'll cover this a little bit more, but you can dive in and find some innovative ways inside your existing contract that you can get the cheapest data possible. But we've got a set of rules. You follow those. You're not going to get into trouble, and you're not going to overpay. And just to highlight, and this is something that it gets buried in the fine print of all the carriers' contracts, which is how much it costs a corporate customer when they go over their pool allotment. And I'm yet to see a customer that or any carrier that's modified this rate. So Bell and Rogers both charge $20 a gig. So that's the equivalent of a 10 gig plan at $200. So it's exorbitant rates. And then TELUS is really high. You definitely don't want to get into overages on TELUS. It's at $50 a gig. And generally we get called in to see where we can help when organizations have run into one of these. Someone did something, they ran up $200 gig over the pool, and lo and behold, you're $10,000. So it gets damaging quickly, and best practice and data management will keep you out of those problems. So the third source, we call it shield your assets, or just asset management. Make sure, like you do for tablets, notebooks, and all other assets across the organization, that you've got good inventory management systems, one, to protect your devices. You make sure that they're properly secured, reduce any losses, and as well capture unused assets with a good system. So we've got some numbers here to say why this is so important. We've been doing this for years now, where we monitor what's the cost in a 3-year plan. Now, we use data from CRTC and CNET and hardware pricing data to determine this. And 2024 was a big year. On a 3-year term, using a standard iPhone, Model N. So in 2024, an iPhone 15. And make sure I get my things right. Yes, be iPhone 14 in 2025, whichever it is. I could be off. But the cost of that over a 3-year term versus what you actually pay for usage, even on a subsidized plan, the cost is now greater for the asset than it is for the plan. So what this means is, by managing your assets, by maybe taking them to a 4-year term, making sure you don't lose them, is probably outside of unused lines, the biggest dial you have to reduce your costs is by managing the assets, making sure they're reused, they're not lost, and where possible, by through good repair programs, stretching them into their full economic life of 4 years. Also, as part of the assets, have a good look at how they do how they're being used. But you can pull asset reports out of, you can ask the carrier for them, or just pull it out if they're on an MDM, you have them on Intune or another tool. Just pull an asset report of what you have, and then pull that out and then do it in a pie chart and say, what do we have out there? We find it gets confusing if you stay with the models, because you've got different models that are out there. We've got, there we go, thank you. We've got different models that are out there. It's hard to tell different carriers or different manufacturers. It gets hard to say what does this really mean. So what we do is we like to indicate what generation they are. So an iPhone 17 now is a Gen 1. That's the terminology we use. You could call it N. An iPhone 16 is a Gen 2 or N minus 1 if you use that methodology. And this is just a really good proxy to say what's the health of our fleet. In this organization, they know we're now working with them to figure out some solutions, but they're getting into a little bit of trouble. They haven't done a lot of upgrades. So, 2/3 of their fleet are now 4 years or older, and they are starting to get problems. And they've got a big hit coming in with a bunch that are 5 years. They're starting to fail and have trouble. And they're looking for solutions to, one, make it not every time someone fails, it's not a big scramble the jets exercise, but that it's a controlled way to respond to those quickly, but also start a proactive plan to upgrade devices. Having that kind of view, again, just helps you bring some balance to it, helps you do it on a more programmatic basis, which always leads to lower cost. We like to advocate, we call it the 4 Rs of device management. And whether it's a tablet, I guess applies to a notebook as well. Most people do this already. Tablets, cell phones, absolutely, is record. First one, make sure you've got records of who has what, whether you use an MDM, whether you use some other system, whether it's your HR system to record assets, or even the carrier system. Some of the carriers are really good at indicating to you what's the current device on the line, but you want to make sure you've got visibility on who's got what. The next one is do have some repair capability. That's a great way to extend the life. Just replacing a device because it's broken is a very expensive way to get someone up and running. Having repair capability across the organization that can respond quickly. People can't be out of service or without a phone, but have a good way to keep them up and running, but repair the devices can save significant dollars. The other one is make sure, we call it the offboarding procedures, but you get the devices back. You've got a good offboarding methodology, and then bring those assets in, refresh them, and reuse them. You follow those 4 Rs, you can have significant impact on your cellular expense. So the fourth one, we call it skip the sides. It's all those extra charges that we alluded to it earlier. Scrutinize the add-ons, the roaming fees, any of the upsells, and avoid unnecessary extras that inflate your bills. We won't get into names, but one of the carriers in particular is very, very good at providing a low monthly service fee, competing on that, and then lots of extras that raise them well above what you would have paid with another carrier. So there's lots of, one carrier is very good at that. They all do it. It's all there. But have that deep dive, have a good look when you see those. So here's some snippets right out of carrier invoices with some examples of what to look for. So, Canada to US text message are still showing up, even though everyone's on North American plans, or they've got North American text and LD. And usually what happens, if you've been with the same carrier for a period of time, and even though they've upgraded, they brought new offers, when they migrate you, it doesn't always go as smooth as what they would like. It's complex systems, but what happens is sometimes the new SOC codes don't transfer or the old SOC codes don't drop off, and you get these lingering charges. So, Canada to US text, this is a case of where, every month they were seeing this 250, and they're all small charges, but they add up. Another one that we see every now and then is local airtime, where someone's actually what happens in these cases, someone's got a data device and they put the SIM in a cell phone, and then when they use that for a cell phone service, they get dinged for not a lot of usage for making phone calls. And these all add up and they get buried in big invoices. Here's another, again, just where they should have been on North American plans, but they're getting charged for text messages and internet. This was just one invoice or one line. It happened across others that we picked up on. And it was exactly the SOC codes didn't go in right when they migrated. These charges got lost in the invoice and they got $1 and $2 quite extensively across multiple lines. Here's a big one, a high-speed service where there was a $5 charge. It was a holdover from way back in the LTE days where there was 781 fees of about $5 each, where it was, the customer had been paying for ages an extra $4,000 charge, even though LTE is, we're now into 5G, not 4G anymore. Another local airtime popping up where significant charge, where you've got someone on a data device making phone calls and getting a large charge. Here was something we saw that was interesting. So someone had a voice phone and they were using data service. and they had this very high roaming charges or a data block fee. So that was one we got rid of. And I'm going to make sure I speed through so we follow our time. And then static IP. Here was a big one for some MS charges on phones that had been paid for months that added up on 6,000 lines. This was a very large client, and they were basically paying $13,000 a month they didn't need to be paying. So finally, manage your contract is regularly review it, negotiate every time you do a renewal, and realign your agreements for better rates and terms. And then don't forget the power of benchmark. This is an exercise with one customer where we brought in competitive data, compared it to their plans and their volume, and this client was able to achieve, by having that information when they went back for their renewal, they saw a 41% savings in their true spend over over a short period of time. The other one, we recommend tender every 2 contract cycles. Do it every cycle if you really like, but definitely don't go more than 2 contract cycles without tendering. And the reason for that, and we've seen it time and time again, when a renewal, customers renewed, contracts renewed, and there's no competitive process. When you do a competitive process, you will see 50% more savings. We see it time and time again. Typically, renewals, the carriers all do the same thing. They'll give you a little bit of a discount, offer you a bigger bucket of data, but if you're not using all your data, they're giving something you're not going to use anyway. So it's a little bit of bit of a sleight of hand to get you to commit. It seems easy, we'll just renew. But always, tender every 2 times. It'll give you 50% more savings than just a straight renewal. And if you don't do that, at least request a cancellation report at the time of renewal. That sends up all the flags inside the carrier. They've got, their systems will flag you as having requested this. You've got a renewal coming. You'll see a lot more love if you do that, and they'll take you a little more seriously on the renewal. And as well, strive to keep your devices coterminous. What we mean by this is if you set up a new contract and you bring in new devices at the early stage, stay as close as you can to that 3-year cycle. What that does is it minimizes your cancellation fees at the end of the 3-year cycle, and you've got a lot more leverage with your carrier. Use bundles prudently. Often there's some bundles. I know often there's a North American coverage for $20 a month. All the carriers have that. They generally don't discount it, but it's one that it only makes sense if the user travels 17 days or more across North America. So you have a look at those, be prudent, but do make sure you always use flat rate roaming. Don't use the flex roaming plans, whether it's Rogers Roam Like Home, whether it's TELUS's Easy Roam. Make sure you use those flat rate. It'll save the big painful experiences that often go. And then finally, not all data is created equal. If you go into your contract, you have pricing on different plans, some are discounted more than others. You can use that to your advantage by figuring out what's the incremental cost of the next gig of data I add. And if you are managing your pool and need to add data, rather than just adding a big bucket at $120 for 100 gig, where you're paying $120, you could just go to upgrading some people's plans to 50 gig, where if it's on a subsidized device, you're only paying 29 cents a gig. There are some really interesting things that you can do just inside your existing contract. Call them pricing anomalies that you can take advantage of. And if you manage your data pool actively, you can really reduce your data costs. So the 3 things that you can do. First off is do a self-audit. Just follow those 4 steps. You can go in, have a look. They're easy to do. Yes, the unused line report's a little bit tougher, but there's 4 things that you can do that are really easy to say, is there some opportunity for you? If you come to yes, or that'll help you come to yes, and then you can dive into it. You can always engage an expert. There are lots of companies out that can give you a hand, that can pull down the files, do some analysis, and help you work through what your opportunity is. And then finally, if you like, you can request an assessment from Valet. We do these all the time, and we always we see anywhere from typically 12 to 30% savings can be produced. So just to close off, I'd like to have some closing words from our great customer, Larry Baldachin.
I mean, the thing that Valet did for us is they did a very thorough assessment based on the invoices that we provided them from our 2 providers. We were using both Bell and Rogers, and we provided Valet with all the information with regards to utilization, the number of devices that we had, whether they were being used or not, the types of services that we were using on those devices, And Valet did a thorough assessment and actually identified that close to 30% of our fleet were not being utilized, and we were actually paying for those lines and buying new devices rather than reusing the ones that we had in place. So they did a great job really quantifying the value of the opportunity to cut back on our wireless spend.
So once again, thank you, Larry. Here's some customers. Not all these would be our active customers, but they're absolutely customers that we've done assessments for. And there's some big names there, and we always produce savings for our customers. And finally, I want to thank everyone so much. Alexa, Dana, thank you guys so much for setting all this up and moderating and keeping me close to on time. Everyone have a great day and a great week. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone.